All right, everybody, welcome to our video on multiplying and dividing integers. The good news is this video is much shorter than the two you had to watch last week, and I do think this is going to be an easier topic for most of us. So, whereas addition and subtraction kind of have a bunch of rules to follow, multiplication and division really only has two, and they are pretty easy to understand. So, looking right here, you can see that integers can be multiplied on a number line. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do here is draw our number line. And just to make this faster, I'm going to fast forward through a lot of me drawing stuff just because I don't want to waste your time. If you need time to draw and you want to pause the video, go ahead. That's up to you. But I'm not going to try to make these videos super long for you to watch. And I'm pretty sure we all know how to draw a number line. So now that we have that drawn, I'm going to show 2 times -3 on this number line, okay? So the way we can think about this actually is 2 groups of -3. Or -3 plus -3. Because remember, multiplication is only repeated addition, okay? So right now I have 2 groups of -3. So I'm going to draw the first one. That's one group of -3. Remember, negative, we go to the left. And then I'm going to add one more group of -3, also going to the left. And that is going to land me at -6, okay? So looking at -6, you know, there's some things we can notice about that number, but the biggest one is that it's negative, okay? So then looking at the 2 numbers we multiplied to get this negative answer, what can you really notice about them? Think about that to yourself for a second. So hopefully looking at these numbers, you're maybe starting to think of a rule that could maybe be true. Maybe looking at the type of numbers you have, maybe you come to the conclusion that a positive number times a negative number gives you a negative answer. You know, looking at those 2 numbers, that we've proven that that's true. Okay, and that's actually going to be our first rule that we learn. Okay, so a positive times a negative gives you a negative. But now, on the second example, I'm going to show you what happens if we have a negative times a negative, okay? So we're going to have to kind of think about this in a unique way. So when we're looking at these problems, it's something that's new, but we've already kind of learned some things about negative numbers, right? And we've learned that the minus sign kind of means the opposite of sometimes. So really what -2 times -2 is asking me is the opposite of 2 times -2, okay? So thinking about it that way, it's easier for us to figure out maybe how we can figure out this answer. Because we've already learned how to do positives times negatives, right? So say I decide to take 2 times -2, okay? Because I know how to do that kind of problem, right? I know my rule. Well, that's going to give me -4, right? But remember, we're looking for the opposite of that. So what's the opposite of -4 that we learned how to do last week? We know that it's +4. So that means that -2 times -2 is going to give me a +4. And what I'm going to do right now on the number line is just demonstrate to you that those are opposites, okay? Just like we learned last week, but just in case you need to type a little refresher, that's on there. But that's how I want you to start thinking about these things, okay, guys? Like, the earlier you can start applying that line of thinking of, well, I already know this rule, so I can build on that knowledge to figure out how these other problems might work. That's how we're going to try to think this year, okay? So seeing this now, we know that our answer here is a +4. So thinking about those rules we came up with, I want you to keep thinking as we move on about what the rule might be if you have the same sign on two numbers, okay? So just keep that in the back of your mind as I keep going through here. So the rules for multiplication and division are actually the same. That's what makes them so easy. With addition and subtraction, you've got to remember a different set of rules for each. But multiplication and division, you do the same thing. You're applying the same principles, okay? It's just important that you remember to separate these from the addition and subtraction ones, because that's the most common mistake I see, is confusing multiplication and division rules for addition and subtraction rules. So let's just keep in mind that they are different, okay? So the first step to do multiplication and division with integers, I'm getting ready to write it. I'm so sorry. I'm moving a little slow. So the first step is to just multiply or divide like normal. So you're not doing anything special. You are not even acknowledging that a positive or a negative sign is present at this point. You are only looking at the numbers, okay? And you are just going to multiply or divide the way you normally do. So don't worry about any special rule or anything yet. Just do the straight math you know how to do. Step 2 is when we're going to start to see some differences, okay, from those addition and subtraction rules, and where we're going to kind of get into the unique things that you need to kind of commit to memory. So these are rules that you unfortunately are going to have to memorize, but we're going to practice with them so much that it's going to become second nature, okay? So don't get too overwhelmed with the memorization. Just know that the more you practice, the more it's just going to stick in your brain, okay? So we've already kind of surmised this first rule, right? We've already kind of figured out, we figured out the second rule. So this first rule is what I wanted you to think about. If your signs are the same. So if you have two positive numbers, so you have 2 times 3, which is what we've been doing up until this point our whole lives. We know that that always gives us a positive number, right? Because you've probably did not run into a negative number until you got to the 7th grade. And I know now you're in the 9th grade, but 7th grade is when you first see them. So 2 times 3 gives you a positive number every time, right? Well, we also just saw that a negative number times a negative number also gives us a positive number. So if the signs are the same, your product or quotient is positive, okay? It will always be a positive number, okay? That is super important for you to remember, okay? Now, here's the first rule that we figured out. And it's if the signs are different, okay? Remember we had a positive times a negative, and it's the same thing if you have a negative times a positive. It doesn't matter the order, but if they are different, the product or the quotient is going to be negative, okay? So if those signs don't match, you are going to have a negative answer. So these rules are super, super, super important to remember, because a lot of the times on your assessments for this, the math itself is not going to be hard. It's going to be, can you remember those sign rules? So just remember your sign rules. Those are the most important part of this lesson, okay? So that is, this video is not over. I'm so sorry. I thought it was. I'm going to work out some example problems and just watch and see how I follow those rules. I'm not going to really walk you through them because I think they're self-explanatory. And then once those are done, you're going to go ahead and do your assignment for the day. And this is your only video. So thanks, guys.